Welcome back, guys, to the JPS Education Roundtable. And we are here with Mackenzie Baker and Josh. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you. What an
And
honor.
Mac. Yes, well,
G'day.
it's an honor to have you. You are the hipster. You're famous, Josh. Tell us about why you're actually an internet sensation. Not many people will know this about you, but give the people the lay of the land as to, I guess, your rise to glory.
Well, I would say about 10 years ago, I was the hipster in the Super Wild hipster video. Um, I did some extras work. I was also on Home and Away for a little while, and they just asked me to be on this YouTube video thing, and I didn't even know who they were. And I rocked up, and I was the only like non-actor out of everyone. But because I had a mad beard and I looked like a hipster, I got the main part.
I love that for you. And guys, we will link that in the description box below. Definitely worth the watch. And
He's paying the price now.
he's paying the price now. And come full circle, you're now a coach at Fortitude Nutrition, and you mentor a lot of coaches. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, coaching. So first, Mac, I'll turn it over to you. I thought we'd start with a general and broad question. What is the overarching objective of a coach? Probably the first is do no harm, primum non nocere, which is the Latin terminology or phrase. But beyond doing no harm, what's the overarching goal of any coach, whether it's training or nutrition related?
That's exactly right, mate. Starting off with first not doing any harm. But, beyond that, I think it starts by asking the question of, well, what is a health coach? And then before we even get to that, we have to think about, well, what is health? And I personally am of the opinion that in the fitness, nutrition space, it's always about, I'm either building, and you got to say building in 2023. You can't say bulking or gaining. It's building. That's the cool term that all the Insta people say, or it's dieting. Okay. Now, this is typically where the conversation ends when it comes to like, what are we trying to help clients, guide clients towards achieving? And I personally think that this is extremely, I guess, narrow or two-dimensional, because health is actually a broad thing. It involves many different facets. And as health coaches, we should be there to help our clients improve their health. We are health coaches. They are paying us for that. I think issues can arise when we leave the conversation at the bulk or cut thing, or the build and cut thing, and we don't actually more deeply consider, what is health and how can I help this person improve their health? And health being anything from just happiness, overall well-being, and it's so many different things beyond just this physique style of thing. And there are tons and tons of training or nutrition goals that are perfectly justifiable.
I like it. And Josh, what would you add to Mackenzie's answer or to the conversation around the overarching objective of a coach?
I actually really love this definition from the International Coaching Federation, and it defines coaching as partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal potential. And I think some of the key things there is partnering with clients, thought-provoking, but also creative. And like Mac was saying, it's about helping them improve their overall health, not just the physical side of things as well. I think we can add in, there's the build, there's the cut, but also there's people that are obsessed with performance as well. And I think it's more about helping people move towards a life that matters to them, and really becoming the best version of themselves, or moving towards that identity-based goal that they might have, rather than just like the intermediate goal of performance or changing their bodies.
I like that. Partnering is certainly a huge aspect of coaching. And I guess something that springs to mind in addition to both of your answers, because health is important, as is, partnering with the client and, solving problems, in a creative and thought-provoking way. I see coaching as being problem solving. And the role of a coach is obviously through their own knowledge and experience, to be able to more efficiently and effectively help somebody solve their problems, whatever they may be. And in many cases, I think, as Mac was alluding to, sometimes the problems that need solving aren't really valued by the client initially, at least. And that's why people want to just build and cut. They're not really concerned with their cardiometabolic health or their psychological or social health, for example. They just want to get shredded for stereo and look good on the beach. But regardless, I think, a good coach can not only solve the client's, I guess, immediate or short-term problems, but their long-term problems as well, which is something that does create that, need for the thought-provoking side of the coaching definition that you spoke about.
I think
so
just on just to add on top of the problem solving thing, I used to be a big believer in, like, as a coach, we are a problem solver. And I think that's what a good coach is. I think a great coach helps the client solve their own problems, and that's more empowering because then they have those strategies, those tools for life. So then they're not becoming over reliant on the coach.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And I think problem solving initially starts with the coach and then should be, the baton should slowly be handed over to the client, right? Because as I'm sure we all agree, at the start of somebody's coaching journey or fitness journey, they probably don't have a lot of the skills, competencies, and education to solve those problems themselves. They're going to be a little bit more reliant on the coach. And I think that's where the role of the coach changes over time, and the more experienced and proficient somebody becomes with their, fitness related skills and knowledge. And I think that's an important distinction to make. A really good point, man. So when somebody's looking to hire a coach, what are some of the red flags that they should be looking out for? Mac, what do you think big red flags besides the six-figure boss babe coaches?
Yeah. So I think probably the biggest red flag for me is signs that the coach, and I'll credit Josh for this little phrase, not word by word, but just the general idea, is signs of a coach not being able to view the world from any lens that is not their own. And their inability to try and meet the client where they are at and consider their priorities and their values and what's important to them. And in doing so, imposing their beliefs, expectations, and I guess levels of importance on training and nutrition goals, strategies, and behaviors. That's probably the biggest, I guess, red flag for me, because it really is almost a surefire indication that this is a coach-centered coach who isn't necessarily interested in coaching the person or guiding the person or coming alongside the person, but rather imposing the strategies that they prefer themselves and the goals that they prefer themselves. And this can be for numerous reasons. Often doing so requires less thought process from the coach, less mental energy, less time. Every check-in is the same. Every client uses the same system, blah, 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 blah. So there are other reasons for doing that. But I think if you are a prospective client and you're wanting to improve your existence, which at the end of the day is what you're trying to do with coaching, if you're seeing signs that the coach is not very, I guess, malleable and conscious of what other people want, then that's something that is, to be at least cautious about.
Yeah. Josh, anything you want to add to that?
I think from a nutrition coaching perspective, I would be very, very concerned if a coach doesn't offer video calls or they only do like fortnightly check-ins, which is something that I see quite a lot when I look at some other coaches' services. Because what it shows is, Mac mentioned this earlier, is that they don't focus on coaching the person. And that's what a really great coach does. They coach the person, not the problem. So they might just, coach fat loss without actually getting to know the person. And that's what we do in video calls. We actually really get to know what is important to this person, why their goals are important to them, and how it's going to help them live this life that they value and move towards what's important. And I think when you don't do video calls, it's very, very hard to do that. So they're not getting to know the person beyond just their goal. And again, I think it's very hard to do that without video calls and regular check-ins.
That's
why
I would
add
agree.
something.
Yeah, go Mac.
Sorry, I just wanted to go a bit of a tangent there. Story time. So I think I've been working with Josh at Fortitude. It'd have to be 5 years now, I think. Josh will know. Now, I was full-blown macro coach Steve prior to Fortitude, and I never did video calls because I was like, oh, that's inefficient. I don't have time. It's just no point. And Josh was like, we do video calls. And at first, I bitched and moaned about it. I used to be like, oh, this is stupid. Oh, it's such a waste of time, blah, 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 blah. I've got to schedule it in. And these days, I look back on that and realize how much of a more effective coaching service I'm able to provide, because I've actually I now have the opportunity to get to know those clients rather than, like Josh said, coaching the problem or coaching the strategy. Actually getting to unpack rather than taking the initial sign up form at face value. Oh, I want to lose 5 kilos. Like actually unpacking that, trying to find goal value connection. And if there isn't goal value connection, talking with the client to see if we can maybe tweak the goal to find something that is more meaningful. So what I will say is that for me, as someone who was very anti video call, I don't know, 5 years ago, whatever it was, I've come full circle, and it's all thanks to Josh.
Thank you.
Well, Josh, thank you for making Mac better. We all appreciate it.
Not a sponsored post.
Sponsored post. No, I really like that. And I think there is certain demographics and like cases where 100% you need to get to know the person to understand the nature of their situation, the context that you're working with, because even trying to solve the problem itself as like that's nearly impossible without knowing the person, because the person is the problem or the bottleneck in many of the cases, especially with Gen Pop. Like, their lifestyle and their situation is what's holding them back from achieving, say, a fat loss goal. So you need to know the person to be able to achieve that goal. But I think there's also, because I know our audience is also very heavily interested in the physique side of things, and potentially competitive physique sports and stuff like that, more serious lifters and body composition trainees. I think there's also cases from my experience where the coaching the person isn't always absolutely necessary. Obviously it helps, and it probably makes the coaching process a lot more enjoyable and rewarding, and certainly more effective in many other ways. Doesn't hurt. But in many cases, there are examples I know of clients who don't need necessarily the video calls or to coach the person. They just need the plan and some kind of constraints around what they're doing and accountability. And they seek some other things in the coaching process. But I would certainly agree that it doesn't hurt. It's always going to have some benefits, and it's certainly more necessary in a lot of Gen Pop cases where the individual doesn't really have, again, back to what I was saying earlier, the knowledge and skill set around their nutritional training to just be able to follow a plan and not have that in-person contact on a regular basis. But feel free to add some thoughts if you will, gentlemen.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're big components of motivational interviewing in the client-centered coaching space. But the people that you don't need to do that with is the highly motivated people. They can essentially just, look at a program and follow it, which is great. But that's, in my mind, that wouldn't really be so much coaching this person. It would be essentially maybe programming and, giving some feedback. But again, it's not coaching the person per se, or highly personalized coaching in that sense. I think that's where that might be a bit of a point of difference. What you were saying before about, you really do need to get to know not just the person, but when they have problem behaviors, why they're doing it. And a big thing, I'm a very big advocate of not just not trying to solve the first problem you see, but trying to solve the real problem. So say, for example, someone is overeating, that's the problem. That's the first problem we see. And a lot of coaches go, all right, here's your macros, just eat less, right? But we want to try and get to the root cause of that problem. Is it stress? Is it boredom? Is it that they're under eating earlier in the day, right? Then if we try and solve that problem or help the client solve that problem, then the later consequences, they basically disappear.
Yeah. Mac?
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think one of the biggest, I think one of the biggest value points in the video call as well is unpacking a why. Seeing that face value problem, overeating, and not just saying, okay, I'm going to provide solutions, but actually asking the question of why is this happening? Can we try and unpack what the various triggers or drivers are? Can we either delete those triggers or drivers? If not, can we look at strategies to try and cope or manage those triggers and drivers? And, asking key questions, listening, and letting the client guide that conversation is where I think you'll uncover a lot of information that can be really pivotal in terms of the direction that you steer, or coaching is steered.
Yeah, I like that. And I guess to follow on from a lot of the points you guys are making now, if we're looking at coaches, we kind of touched on some of the red flags. But if we were to say, what are the things that people should look for then? What are the skills, competencies do we want to seek in a coach? I think a really good sort of framework to look at coach development is from the sense of like knowledge, because we have obviously our like theoretical knowledge, which is declarative knowledge. So our knowing knowledge of, say, the physiology of fat loss, for example, nutrition science, exercise science, all that kind of stuff. We also have procedural knowledge, which is our doing knowledge. And that's where things like our communication skills or interpersonal skills and stuff like that come into it, which is a lot of what we seem to be discussing today. So let's move away from, I guess, the declarative knowledge, because we know what people need to know when it comes to, nutrition or exercise science, and it's pretty basic. But in terms of like the skills that people, coaches should have when it comes to the more procedural stuff, the doing side of things, what are some of the key, I guess, skills and attributes that coaches should look to develop over the course of their careers, or clients should seek out in coaches, Josh?
I would say number one is asking questions.
Yeah. So
learning, that would be the number one communication thing. Like, I think a lot of coaches could get caught in the trap of thinking about communication is how you deliver a message. Yeah. But again, if we think about empowering the clients and getting them to solve their own problems, or increase someone's level of intrinsic motivation or autonomous motivation, we want to learn how to ask the right questions and get these things out of the clients. There's these light bulb moments, and they have this sense of ownership over the whole process and this element of choice as well. So I would say, learning how to ask the right questions and not just having a toolkit or a list of questions to ask. I think that's a great starting point. But I think over time, getting used to this, what we call like reflective inquiry. So learning how to use a combination of reflections and questions, but also questions that are very relevant to what the client is saying.
Yeah, I like it. Mac?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Josh said there. And I would add also being a good listener and remembering that the client is the expert of their life. So it's almost always better for you to just listen, because you will, as I said, attain more information that is critical to where coaching sort of heads. So yeah, that would probably be a huge one as well. I mean, I think it also differs depending on the sort of nature of what type of health coach you are. As a personal trainer in a previous life, I have some opinions of what is desirable on like a general gym floor setting, not like a physique athlete setting, not in a performance athlete setting, but like local, anytime, local fitness first sort of PT gen pop style. I have some opinions as to what is sort of makes a good coach in those settings, and that is somewhat different to the other examples I described, and as well as online nutrition coaching, which is what we now do at Fortitude.
Yeah, awesome. I think a big part of coach development over the course of time, I think, is improving their self-awareness. And I think that's something that both of you can share some pretty cool insights on as well, because at least seems to me that, you, Josh, not you, Mackenzie, you're an ignoramus, but I'm kidding. Josh, you seem to have thought about this a lot, and tried to really deeply understand like what a good coach, is to you, and like how to better, ask questions and solve problems, not just, I guess, resting on your laurels with just asking like a list of questions, getting the answers, and that's enough information. Like really trying to go deeper on that. And I think that takes a certain level of introspection and self-awareness to come to the realization of, that you can do more, you can be better. So I guess talk to us about how, I guess, you've gone about trying to, understand yourself as a coach and your flaws, shortcomings, and all those kind of things, to be a better coach, and like what that process kind of looks like.
Reflection, therapy. Therapy has helped me massively in my personal life, and understanding like that there is a reason why you do everything that you do, and there is a reason why clients do everything that they do. And I think this is where, again, if we kind of tie it back into a bit of a red flag, I say a red flag is when coaches are very frustrated with their clients, and a green flag is when a coach gets very curious and thinks, why is this client doing this? Or why am I doing this? I think that, yeah, self-awareness is a lifelong skill we want to try and develop as coaches, but also we want to try and develop this in our clients. That's what I think the benefit of a check-in also is this self-reflection. But I just think really getting curious and inquisitive of like, why is this happening in the first place? And what is the root cause of this? And then trying to get back to again, like when we try and establish what that root cause is, we can really solve that problem for good. But again, I think for me, just I'm a big questioner. There's a book called The Four Tendencies, and I did that quiz and I was like, fuck, I just nearly 100%. I just try and question everything. Why is this the way that it is? Why is this person doing what they're doing? And coming at it from a very non-judgmental place as well, and very compassionate and very empathetic. Because again, there is a reason why everyone does what they do.
Okay. I totally respect the shit out of that. But I think one of two things has led you to get to that I guess point in your career. One, you've gone through the full spectrum of experiences within the Dunning-Kruger effect. Or two, you're just a very I guess critical thinker, and that's quite an innate thing. And I think it's probably a combination of the two. But how would you advise young coaches who are at a point in their career, and Mac, you can jump in on this as well, where they feel like they need to know everything and that they need to have the answers and not, delve deep into certain questions, because doing so will really challenge their identity, and cause them to feel some sense of imposter syndrome. They need to be the expert to have confidence in their abilities at this point, to get buy-in from their clients. And it does take, I guess, a lot of notches on the belt, a lot of experience, and as I said, scores on the board to get to a point where you can start to say, well, I'm not sure, and start to think about things a little bit more critically and be vulnerable in your knowledge and confidence or certainty in answer. And I guess, pass over the baton, when it comes to, you guys talk about the writing reflex, for example, where we have to be the ones that give the answers. Like, it takes a lot of, I guess, not just humility, but extreme confidence. And I don't think that that's something that young coaches can necessarily get straight away. I feel like they do have to fight for the right to, be heard and listened to for obvious reasons. So what would your advice there be, Mac? I can see you sort of jumping around. You're ready to chime in.
It's a very tough question to answer, I think. I think obviously you have to have a baseline level of knowledge, because you are the expert on training and nutrition. So there needs to be a level of knowledge there, obviously, which comes with your stock standard sort of education. But I think it's also a case of a few things. Never making assumptions, so never assuming. If a client isn't doing something, never just being like, oh, they're just lazy, or oh, they lack discipline, or whatever. That's where it kind of starts. Asking those questions, assuming that there's always a why or reason behind something, and getting curious. Okay, never assuming, getting curious. And if you don't have the answers, I think you'd be surprised how often the clients actually have the answers. If you just ask them good questions and kind of create a space where they can explore their thoughts, their barriers, and their struggles in a non-judgmental way. And you need to create that safe, non-judgmental environment for them to feel comfortable to do that. And I think if you have a problem or you don't know the answer for a client struggle, going through that process can often reveal the answer, or at least provide some kind of direction. And if still you don't have the answer, or something is beyond your set of knowledge or whatever, never being afraid to refer out. I think especially in the fitness industry, from my observations, it's like this stigma around coaches referring out, like, oh, it means I'm not good enough. Oh, it means I don't know enough. And the client will they pick up on that. Oh, he doesn't have the knowledge. But actually it shows honesty, and the clients will appreciate that. It allows you to focus on the things that you're qualified, good, and interested in or at. And it gets better outcomes for the client, because you're referring out to someone who is an expert in the area that they might be struggling with, that you're not an expert in. So it's also better for business, because the client will have a better outcome. And from a litigious perspective, it's also safer for the coach as well, because it's that whole scope of practice thing.
Litigious, that's a very legal term. You've been hanging around certain people.
Hanging around you, mate.
Yeah, certain people highly connected to that side of things. Very good. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I really like that. Josh, anything that you want to add there?
Yeah, I would say, again, I focus on the nutrition side of things mostly. So I think most nutrition coaches already know enough to help the people they want to work with. But it's this, again, you mentioned before, imposter syndrome. I need to know more. I don't know enough. So I always say, what is enough? Define what enough is. And I like to try and go through this, like challenging this irrational belief, and then that consequence is them feeling like they're not enough, they don't know enough. And I say, um, like Max said, people may have the answer themselves. Most people know they should be eating fruits and veggies and exercising regularly and not drinking too much alcohol or smoking, right? I would say most people know that, but there is a reason why they're not doing it. What's the stat? Like 5 to 7% of the Australian population eat the recommended serves of fruit and veg per day. But I would say most of them know that fruits and veggies are good for them. There's a reason why they're not doing it. So as a nutritionist, you don't need to know about like advanced glycogen resynthesis rates to help Jane, the accountant. Like, you don't need to know that. Like, that stuff is taking up mental resources that are limited, that you could be spending on your communication skills and your behavior change skills, right? If then Mac, the marathon runner, comes in and needs to know that stuff, you go,
Hey,
cool.
hey, that's a low blow, man. You know the prick can
You say I'm small, bro?
You know he can barely walk at the moment. Come on, that's a low blow.
You say I'm skinny and I look like a marathon runner?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no wonder I have poor body image.
That's
Jesus.
fucking two birds, one stone there. That was a brilliant, brilliant
Boom,
pacing.
boom. TKO. You can go, all right, I can find that out. Like, if you have it in your notes, but also like, yeah, you can either refer out, but also you can do some of your own research to get the answer for that person, rather than that taking up so much mental resources that you could be using again on your communication skills. So I think finding like saying, I don't know right now, but even sometimes there's stuff that I know, I will then forget because I don't use it very often. And I'll just say to someone, oh, I don't know right now. I'll either go through my notes quickly now, or I'll just find it and send it to you. But there's no problem with saying, I don't know. I think it shows a bit of humility, but it's also you being authentic. And I think if we go back to what is a great coach, someone who is authentic, a genuine person. And when you can see that and see that they actually care about you, like, I think that's a definite green light for a client.
And to add to that, actually, when clients see that you are genuine and they see that you genuinely care, I think that they're going to be more likely to take heed of things you say, or at least be receptive to some of the like points or suggestions or ideas that you bring to the table, because they're going to feel like, they're going to be confident that you have their best interests at heart, that you're a genuine person, and that you've also taken the time to get to know them and listen to them as well.
Yeah, I like all of that. So a question that springs to mind here, because we know that everyone is sort of born with variations and differences in their innate empathy or their emotional intelligence, so to speak, which would really influence how much they can genuinely care for somebody else, right? We know that, for example, women on average more empathetic than males, because they're more social beings, they're more cared about people rather than things, whereas men are more concerned with things and acquiring things. So there's differences there. Now, what would your advice be to somebody who might be struggling with that side of things as a coach? Because I know that I've certainly met a lot of coaches who are great coaches, who know all the theoretical stuff. They're actually good coaches, but they just struggle to connect with a lot of their clients, or to build those deep and meaningful relationships that they need to, or even then, do they have to have deep and meaningful relationships? How can they sort of navigate, I guess, that challenge in their coaching career?
It's a tricky one. I would like to then even go back to, if you are a coach before you get into the industry, ask yourself why you're getting into this industry in the first place. And I always say that, nutrition, coaching, and personal training is a people job first and foremost. It's not a nutrition and training job. So do you want to help people and work with people, or do you want to do stuff with nutrition and training? I think it's a big difference. But it could also be a bit of a practice, trying to just sit on, like, put yourself in the other client, in the client's shoes, put yourself on the other side of the table, right? Think about, as a coach, when are there times where you are not adherent to something? You may be very adherent to nutrition and training because you love it, okay? But what other areas in your life aren't you very consistent? And then start to think about why, all right? Because I work with a lot of coaches, and I love it when they don't complete a check-in form before a consultation and they don't do their homework. Not because it means less work for me, it's because they are humans. And they can go, oh, I just didn't have time, or I was quite busy. I was like, that's okay. because your clients do the same thing. So are you going to be a hypocrite and judge them? I hope not. Because then it opens your mind of like, okay, this is just one area in my life where I'm very, very good. And then you can start to understand there's other areas where you're not so consistent. And this is why also I don't like the saying, how you do anything is how you do everything, because that's just clearly false.
Yeah, that's built on a lot of assumptions. Totally incorrect in my opinion. Mac?
Yeah, I think that if you are a coach, like Josh said, it's a people job first and foremost. And I've heard the phrase of I don't want to be a hand holder. I want to be like a training coach or a nutrition guy or girl. I don't want to hold the hands of my clients. And I think if you're going to be a coach working with people, like I think that's kind of part of the job. At the end of the day, like you're there to come alongside them, to guide them. And if you're not willing to go through a little bit of hand holding to a degree, then I don't know if coaching is really for you.
Yeah, that's pretty like blunt, but spot on, Mac. I really do think that if you don't want to work with people, then coaching isn't for you, because you need to be understanding.
Yeah.
Like it's in the job description.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the issue, right? It's not in the job description. Like at what point when you apply to be, well, you don't even apply. People just, self-proclaimed nutrition coaches. Like there is no job description. There is no, I guess, roles and responsibilities necessarily when people sign up to subcontract out of a good life and start coaching people, right? I think that's in large the issue is that a lot of people are getting into this career blinded by what the job actually entails.
You're right. Yeah.
And then they go through the process. They realize that there's a lot of hand holding and like empathy and emotional intelligence needed, high degree of communication skills, regular contact with people, and they're put off by that. And then they want to be the programmer. And they go through that process of, fuck, this is too much. This is too hard. I just want to write programs. And why can't all my clients just be like this one client that I have that's highly motivated? I just want to go coach all that. Here we go. Max like moves around. Mac, yes.
I just want to say, I don't want to cut you off because you're on a roll there. So I want you to keep going. But
no. It's a process. It's a process. I love when I see you bouncing around the screen. You start doing these ones. It's Mac's time. It's Mac's turn to talk. Yes, Mac.
It's a process. You like training. You get into a bit of nutrition. Maybe you compete in a bikini competition. All right.
This is a real.
Then you go, all right. Then I'm gonna start coaching people. I'm a coach. Yeah, great. I'm moving up the ranks. All right. I'm gonna be a mad dog. I would be an online coach. You're an online coach, but then you start to realize, these clients, they're pissing me off. They're always sending me messages. I just can't deal with their whinging, complaining. And then you start to get a little bit bored of it, a little bit frustrated. You start to become a bit angry. And then you realize, I don't want to deal with these people. I don't want to do this anymore. So the programming thing, I'm just going to do the programming thing.
Six-figure boss babe business.
Yeah. And then next minute, I'm going to be a six-figure boss business bloke or babe. All right. And that's kind of the cycle. And, I feel like the coaches who don't want to do the people thing, they don't last. And it's okay to change careers and stuff if for those people, like it's good that they're admitting themselves to them rather than, working with clients and getting a poor outcome and being frustrated themselves. But, if you're not willing to do a bit of hand holding, if you're not empathetic, if you're not willing to put yourself in the shoes of your clients, if you're not willing to kind of unpack things and take the time to get to know them and all these sort of things, then, you'll probably go through that process, become a boss business babe or bloke. And then who knows what you'll be doing after that. By that time, you probably have a property portfolio, probably won't matter.
Yeah. You'll probably be, behind a computer somewhere working with numbers.
Yeah. This job is not just about being able to train whenever you want and work wherever or whenever you want. And I think if we kind of go full circle back to what Max said at the start, we're looking at total health here. We're looking at all areas of someone's life. So think about the consequences that your actions as a coach have on not just someone's physical health, their total health, but also their social circle, like their family. This is ever since becoming a dad, I've become very passionate about working with parents and then just thinking about how I work with someone and how that's going to influence their children one day. Like, it really scares me to think about, okay, the state that the industry is in now, but the whole diet culture stuff, right? How people are very scared of certain foods, and what message is that going to send to their children? And then how is it going to be working with those children in 20 or 30 years? So really thinking about the consequences that your actions have as a coach on, like, and what is the downstream effect of all of these things? Because you are frustrated, because you're not empathetic, because you don't take the time to understand your clients.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, yeah, just to add to that, I am very alarmed when I see like, inquiries or people come to me for coaching, and they want to do a bodybuilding competition, or even like, get into powerlifting or something, their parents and whatnot. I'm just like, for me, that's in some cases, like, this is probably bad for business, but in some cases, like, that's a big red flag that there's something missing. It's like, are you not aware of like what this potential process could do to you, and the impact that can have on your relationship, and the strain that puts on your family, but then also like the habits and behaviors that your children are going to pick up, like that's scary, right? And I very much have become cognizant of these things being a parent as well, and how what I influence my clients to do if they are parents as well, is going to have that knock-on effect. And I think that's a really, really cool way of looking at it. And I think a lot of coaches should consider that. But the harsh reality is a lot of coaches can't understand because they don't have kids. A lot of the coaches in the industry don't last 10 years from when they're 23, 24 to then 33, 34, and when they've got kids. A lot of the coaches in the industry are these young kids who would have absolutely zero fucking understanding of anybody else because they haven't experienced jack shit. And the reason I can say this and know this is because I was that coach one day as well. I was the coach, that we're describing here. When I first started, I had a, template of foods that people could eat. There was no alcohol. There was no eating out. There was, they had to follow their meal plan. If they didn't, they were a failure. I'd crack the shits because I wanted to get results for my clients. And I look back and I think, holy shit, that's just because I had no fucking understanding of what they were going through. And I obviously didn't know what I know now. And I think that young coaches, it's okay because you can't go through things that you haven't gone through. Like, that's just, an unrealistic expectation of anyone in the industry to have a view. But you need to be aware of that. You need to be aware that, okay, I don't know what other people are going through. And that circles back to what you guys were saying earlier about how important it is to try to get an insight into your client's life so that you can have more consideration around the decisions you make. And I think that's really, really critical to that, conversation. Mac?
Yeah, just add to that. And
I've realized that there's two types of Macs, right? There's the jumping around. He's on one. He's ready to fucking go ham. And then there's the eyes and the head just subtly turning. That's thoughtful Mac, and he's ready to enlighten us. Enlighten us, Mac. Here we go.
Yeah, I love what you guys are saying, because obviously both your dads and you're cognizant of, the way you speak about food and the way you speak about bodies around, those who you're raising. And
Sorry,
it is such a
people ask me if I'm going to compete again, like bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I got two young girls. Ain't no fucking way. Like, I'm getting back on a stage when like young girls, like I see them, like talking about the F word's banned in our house. They're not allowed to say fat. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but at least I'm not going to allow them to describe anything or, anyone as that word for now. And, when they get older, that'll change. But I see young girls like pulling up their tops and stuff. So I will not compete in bodybuilding. I will not diet in front of my kids. I will not weigh food. I will not weigh myself. Like, they're just things that I just will not do. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, that's all right.
Yeah, I think people really, really fail to realize that, like, when it comes to the kids involved, you got to be very, very careful.
Just anyone, not even just kids, but just these topics, they're fragile topics. People think, I need nutrition coaching. I just, here's your macros, my flexible dieting ebook. Like, it's just going to be easy. And it's just something that it's easy for me. It's like, nutrition coaching is no joke. It's not risk-free. There are risks involved and they run deep. And it might not be, surface level visible. But then, you realize this stuff comes up. And even for me personally experience, like, growing up in the 90s, like, and the early 2000s, whatever, with a parent who worked in fashion and being always involved in that fashion space and being influenced by that, I now realize how damaging some of those things have been for me. The last sort of, I guess, 5 to 10 years, the shift in the way I view food, and just realizing all these things that I used to do and how I used to think and how I used to train and all this sort of stuff. It's like it all is that stuff coming to the surface that I was exposed to when I was even younger. And exactly, like I was the coach who was the macro coach Steve, and during that era of my life. And I just think, it's damaging to think that I was like that person. But at the same time, I think it's given me very unique perspectives on how we should be talking, even just talking about training and nutrition.
Yeah. I agree, man. I think you have to sometimes go through some shit to find gold, right? And we're a very big believer in, many people, even just very enlightening or illuminating thoughts. It's like you have to go through some not so good ones to get there, right? And you have to, it's always a process. Like very few people, I think, are blessed or, in Australian slang, kissed on the dick to just have those, brilliant insights and understanding. Most of the, best communicators, most experienced coaches have gone through some, hard stuff, to get there. And I think that's true in many facets of life. Josh, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, just on the back of what you're saying there, I think you then have to care enough to learn.
Yeah.
You have to care enough about this job and about people to learn how to get better and how to be the best coach possible.
I like it. Guys, look, I know we could probably chew the fat on this topic for a very long time without batting an eyelid, but I think that's a really, really good place to wrap things up. And I think a lot of people will take plenty from that. If you had one piece of advice to your younger self as a coach, Mac, what would it be?
Yeah, this is a huge one. And I was even saying this like a couple of days ago. This idea of, do you have regrets in life or do you not have regrets in life, or are all those things just part of the process to get there? Yeah, they are. But, I actually wish that I never got into training as much as I did. Like I kind of never took it to a level where it started to have a negative impact on my life, because it sounds so like over dramatic, but I genuinely feel like I lost 4 or 5 years of my 20s because I was so fixated on that. And that's something that I'm just like, I'll never get that time back again.
Yeah. So the advice there would be not to overemphasize training at the expense of life experience.
Or just like what you
Yeah.
want from life, not what you think you want to get because, you're surrounded by this fitness trend and whatnot, but actually, or wanting to get validation from others, but actually thinking like, what do I want to do? What's important to me? What do I want my day to look like? Like, do I want my day to look like I'm tracking my macros and I'm training and really diligently? And for a lot of people, if that's the case, great. But for me, it wasn't, but I was doing it.
Yeah.
So that's probably my biggest thing.
Awesome. I like it. Josh.
The advice I'll give to my younger self when I started coaching.
Yeah.
Get curious.
Short and sweet. Love it. Get curious. Get curious. Chase experiences, not gains.
That's it. What about you, Jacob? What would you say to your younger self as a coach?
Be okay with not knowing, because I was very, very much driven by and obsessed with knowing everything. I get very obsessive about things, and it probably went too far into the education side of things and like knowing the theory and whatnot at the expense of learning a lot of other really important skills. As we were saying earlier, probably like knowing it, being okay with not knowing, and realizing that you're never going to know enough, and that's okay. Just trying to figure out like, how much do I need to know? Okay, cool. That's enough of that. And I can, focus on the actual clients and the behavior side more for sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Guys, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate your insights. Where can we find you? Fortitude Nutrition. Mac, we know where to find you. Josh, Fortitude Nutrition.
Yeah, Fortitude Nutrition Coaching, and also hero.nutrition.mentoring.
Awesome. Guys, thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.